So I'm going to start with a few questions for Matt, and then I'm going to turn the tables and let Matt interview Eric, which should be fun. They're very fun to watch together. Okay. So if you guys wouldn't mind, if you could please start by giving us an overview of Kripke Enterprises.
So Kripke Enterprises is based here in Toledo. We have offices in Tennessee and Florida. We are in the aluminum recycling business throughout North America. We also do some export outside of North America. And here we just opened retail scrap recycling in Toledo. We also have an aluminum coil division. I know that you're very excited to hear about this. No one really wants to hear about the TV business, so I'll keep going. Okay. Actually, that's enough.
Okay. Okay. So now tell us about growing up in the family business. What was your relationship like? How and if were you all engaged in the family business when you were younger?
So my dad, Larry, worked with his brothers, Harley and Bobby, and they work with their father, Sherwin, in a family business. And in 1983, my dad came in my bedroom. I was 15 years old, and he said, I need to talk to you about something. Your uncles and I, we have an offer to sell the company. And I said, wow, that's great. Why are you talking to me? And he said, because I thought one day we would work together. And I said, well, you should definitely sell the company because I am never going to work in the scrap business. Never. And fast forward a number of years later, and it didn't hold a lot of appeal. So for those of you who have family businesses and are disappointed that your kids are, how come they're not interested? How come they don't see the benefit in this? Maybe they'll come around. And as it turns out for my parents, they got 1 out of 3, the best one.
Eric, what about your perspective in growing up in the family business?
Can everyone hear me, by the way? Yeah, I just want to be clear that my dad never came into my room and said, I thought we would work together one day. That's never happened to me. I have great love for that business. Even though I'm not actually specifically in it, like I've always felt it was in our blood. I mean, it was our grandfather and it was our uncles, and it was conversations at dinners and family gatherings, and on weekends. Some of my happiest memories are Dad would take me to his office and I would get to like play around. And back in that day they had a car baler, like one of those great car crushers, and got to watch the cars getting crushed. And like it was always a part of who we were. So though I'm not in that business, I do consider Kripke Enterprises in that business a big part of my identity.
Great. Well, thank you both for sharing that. Okay, so from there, you went off in different directions for college. Matt, you went to U of M. We'll accept that. Eric, you went to USC. I guess we'll accept that too.
You notice there's no applause for that at all.
Not a lot of USC fans there.
So what led you in those different directions?
Well, I followed in, I have 2 uncles who went to the University of Michigan, and my parents met there at the University of Michigan. I was going, dragged up to football games, just like Steve Scutch, from the time I was probably 4 years old. And I was basically brainwashed. And as it turns out, I loved it. But, my parents have paid for a lot of therapy for the brainwashing.
Fair. Eric, what about you?
I think what made it probably slightly easier for my parents and family is I was just a weird kid in general. And 2, I was weird in that from like age 9, I wanted to make movies and TV shows. It was sort of the only thing I ever said I wanted to do. I think so. I was always so driven on it, and so driven to come to Los Angeles, and so when I got into the USC Film School, I mean, that was really scary to move from 18 years old and move from Toledo to where USC is, which is, you know, downtown Los Angeles. And I was really terrified, but they were really great about supporting me, and they've been nothing but supportive the whole time. They did make me apply to Michigan, because, but outside of that, they've been amazing.
So, tell the truth. When you applied to Michigan, how disappointed are you that they didn't let you in?
I'll have you know, I was accepted to Michigan, and on the special Better Than Your Brother scholarship.
So I'm going to take over some of the questions. So Eric, for those of you who are not aware, if you didn't do a Wikipedia or Google search before this event, I'm very proud of my younger brother. He is Eric, are you a 4- or 5-time showrunner?
5.
5-time showrunner. Just so that people here understand what that is, because the first time I heard the expression showrunner, I thought it was someone who got coffee for everyone on a show. So what exactly is a showrunner?
It's the simplest way to put it is it's Tina Fey's job in 30 Rock. The slightly more complicated way to put it is your job is literally to run the show. You're sort of the person in charge of every big decision, from figuring out the budgets to running the writer's room to casting and handling the actors to giving the directors and editors notes, deciding how it looks, deciding how everything feels. Behind every show you watch, there's a showrunner who is the person who sets the tone. In movies, you guys are probably maybe more familiar with the idea that in movies, there's the director. You know, there's a Steven Spielberg movie, and he made that movie. In television, that job is the showrunner.
So let me do the math. So in 2005, you got Supernatural on the air. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah.
So Supernatural was kind of your first big one. There was one small one before that, and yes, that was Mom's favorite, by the way.
I know.
Joni is the only one who loved Tarzan.
Yeah, for the record, it sucked out loud.
Yes. Agreed. So tell us a little bit about, you have an idea for a show, you go in and you do a pitch. We've all seen it played out like in a movie or TV. Walk us through what that process looks like. You go and you do this pitch for this show that ends up being on the air for 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think one of the big takeaways of this evening is our business, my particular business gets a lot of mythologizing, but it's really like any other business. It's really any presentation. And to tell a short story about it is, I had this opportunity to pitch this show Supernatural that Matt's talking to, and I put together a really elaborate pitch. I was really excited. I came in, I pitched my little heart out. I had a whole presentation to Warner Brothers. So there's about 5 or 6 executives in a room listening. And when it was over, they said, yeah, no thanks, pass. We're not that interested. And I could have said, oh, well, thanks anyway, but I didn't. I said, well, what part what part are you interested in? What part aren't you? And they said, well, we like the idea that it's scary and there's ghost stories, but this whole, I had a story about a reporter. This whole story about a reporter is boring and played out. Do you have anything else? And I wrote in my notebook the day before, like, you could tell this story with, two guys in a car, which ended up becoming the show. So just right there in the moment, I said, well, I have this whole other pitch about it, and it's amazing, and it's about these two brothers, which I made up on the spot because I was thinking of Matt, actually. And I was like, there's these two brothers, and they travel around, and they fight ghosts. And then the Warner Brothers people lean forward and they say, oh my God, that's amazing. Tell us more, pitch that. I said, oh, I'd love to, but my pitch is home. I need to go home and get it. Can we set a new meeting? And then I went home and then wrote that pitch. So like anything, it's like you have to be able to think on your feet and absorb the curveballs that are thrown your way. So yeah, and then after that, you write a script and, hopefully get a director and so on and so on.
It's a great business lesson on pivoting, which we all had to do over the last 18 months or 20 months, however, it feels like it's been 7 years, but over the last like 20 months or so of COVID, a lot of us have had to pivot and change the way that we did things. You just shot season 3 for The Boys up in Toronto, and tell us a little bit about what that's like to shoot during COVID. What are some of the extra protocols, and what's the extra cost involved in doing that?
Yeah, it was definitely the hardest for all of us. I mean, everyone who's here tonight. I mean, what a difficult year, especially, trying to run, all of our businesses. And yeah, no, it was a lot more challenging because when you think about it, the people who are the most vulnerable in our entire production are the ones who are the most important, and you can't do it without, which are the actors. Like, they can't wear a mask, they can't have any facial, shield while they're on camera. Sometimes they're kissing, sometimes they're really face to face, sometimes there's love scenes, or they're fighting, but they're always in really close contact with no protective gear whatsoever. And then they have makeup artists who are touching their face all day, and hair people and costume people. So it was really hard. So the only way to deal with that is everyone around them has to be so stringently protected and masked up and daily tested. Because an actor getting sick is millions and millions of dollars loss if you can't shoot for however long they're sick. I mean, that's a disaster. So, every single person had to have masks, again, like a lot of our businesses, but it really slows things down because every 2 hours you have to have a water break. And so your entire crew has to just step outside just so they can drink a bottle of water and then come back, because they're not allowed to be anywhere near the actors without wearing complete with a mask and a face shield. So it was really intense, and it's hard, when you're trying to do fight scenes and explosions and love scenes, with all of that. But Matt, I would ask you the same question. Like, how did you guys manage when you were dealing with COVID this year?
I'll answer that in a second, but I don't want to let you off the hook on something.
Oh.
Give us a rough number. You don't have to give us the exact number, but the rough number of the budget per episode for a show like The Boys, and how much extra did it cost you to film during COVID?
It's without getting too specific, it would be a high 7-figure show per episode. So, and then COVID slap on top of that per episode, easily another 20%. So it's a huge expense. And the studios whose job it is to not bleed money, we're bleeding money. So, on top of everything else, the battles, to just try to, because they're spending a lot of money keeping people safe, and you can't argue with that. But then they say to you, well, then don't do the car chase. and it's my job as a producer to protect the quality of it. And I would always say, you know, people won't grade this season on a curve. People aren't going to say, oh, well, it was really hard to do it during COVID, so we'll accept a subpar show. I was like, the audience can never know the difference. So we have to do all of the same crazy stuff we would do, even though it's harder and more expensive. And then crazy small things like in Toronto, like there's price gouging, right? Because the supply chain, like which we really suffered from, the cost of lumber went up 170%. And all we do is build sets. Sets are not really metal or brick or anything that you think they are. They're just giant wood structures. And so we lost like a couple $1 million just from the cost of lumber. So just raw material. So again, it's a lot of the same problems everyone else has. So yes, now I want to hear like how you guys pivoted with COVID.
All right, but now you just open us up to another question. I will answer it.
Quit trying to hide. Why are you trying to hide so much? What are you trying to hide?
Contrary to what you heard, we are not responsible for COVID. We didn't do it. So like a lot of companies, we all struggled the same way that you guys did back in March of last year. We made the same decision that many of you did, and we just shut down for a while. We told our employees to go home. We weren't sure. Think about all the uncertainty that we all faced, and we did what we could remotely. Our volume went down by 70% for a couple months. And then we had a meeting and we decided to pivot. And that's when we decided we're going to go into retail, which is buying scrap from the public because of our location at the corner of Central and Centennial. You have an old lawnmower, please bring it in. You have an old bike, please bring it in. This isn't supposed to be an ad, but we're paying, I think, 50 cents for aluminum cans right now. But no, not each. Well, it depends what's in them. Yeah, maybe. And then we started slowly bringing people back in the office, and we currently still wear masks when we get up from our desk because we do not want to take a chance that we're shutting our business down again. That was a really painful time. A lot of our employees were very scared, and we were very clear with them on Zoom calls that we had daily. We said, we're going to continue paying you. Your job is safe. Your job is safe. Your job is safe. And even though they hear that, they don't believe you. And even though you've given them 25 years of building credibility, they still don't believe it because they see what's going on in the world. And, you know, and slowly but surely, with a lot of help from a lot of people, we made it back. But it was tough to keep people safe, and it was, you know, our HR person, Emily Fisher, is here tonight, and she just did an incredible job. Emily's been very active in the UT Center for Family Business for years, by the way, and she did an incredible job keeping our employees safe. So was that enough of an answer for you, Eric?
Yeah, it was good.
All right, enough boring stuff about us. Let's hear about the movie business. All right, so Eric, in the TV business, a show like The Boys with a multi-million-dollar budget per episode, how many people work on that show?
So many that I couldn't give you an exact number because it's all like moving and building. But when you're in production, it's pretty significantly north of 300. But people come and go based on your needs, right? Carpenters show up to build, Teamsters, and then never mind like all the special effects, visual effects, lighting. So it's just different crews. That's part of what I love about that job is it's take one business and then take 20 businesses and all of them experts in a particular field, and then they all kind of come together to make this one thing. That's really exciting to see.
You mentioned yeah, unions, you mentioned actors. Which ones are more difficult to work with?
Actors are more difficult than the unions, I have to say. You know, I'm not in the group that negotiates contracts with the unions, but I'm definitely in the group that negotiates with the actors.
All right, without mentioning any names,
There's no.
Who is the most difficult actor on your shows? You don't have to answer that. Don't answer that.
No,
don't.
There's no way I'm going to answer that.
How about this one? Of the people who you have worked with, whether as a director or some of the producers you've worked with, who do you think you've taken some things from as mentors, and what are some of the things you've taken from them?
You know, I've been fortunate. I've gotten to work with a lot of, you know, really smart and interesting people. One of the producers on The Boys with me is Seth Rogen, and he's the thing I'll say about Seth is this, you know, it's not gossip, but is the character you see on screen is not Seth. Seth is remarkably driven and ambitious and focused and smart. Because when you think about it, you just don't reach that height of a really difficult business without being completely on point all the time. So that kind of stoner, sloppy thing is not at all who he is. He's really focused and sharp.
Wait, are you saying that he doesn't like weed?
He does like weed, yes, but he's, by the way, able to smoke an incredible amount of it and remain completely on point, which is not a skill that I possess. Honestly, the best advice I ever got, and I think, you know, a lot of it goes towards people in management positions, is the one, when I started Supernatural, I was quite young, and they paired me up with an older showrunner named Bob Singer. You know, he had made some shows that, you know, were big in the early 90s, you know, things like Midnight Caller and stuff like that. And so he sort of trained me. And on the very first day, the very first thing he said to me is still the best advice I ever got in that particular job, which is, he said, you're in the business of making decisions. And the corollary to that rule is it doesn't actually have to be the right decision. And I found that to be the most valuable advice for at least my particular job, because people want to know what direction they're rowing in. And they can just smell blood in the water. And when you're like, well, I don't know, I got to think about it, let me sleep on it, they're just sitting and waiting for you now. So productivity goes off a cliff. But if you give them a decision and there's something they can work on, even if you drive home that night and you say, that was, you know what, that was the wrong decision, you can still come in the next morning and say, that was the wrong decision, and now we're rowing in that direction. And they're still active and engaged, and maybe finding things, even if you'd gone the wrong way for a minute, even finding things that you wouldn't have found otherwise. So I found that just in terms of human management, if you just stop and the wind just drops out of your sails and you're just there drifting, waiting for a moment, you're dead. And I see people do it all the time. Shows fail. And I think the number one reason shows fail is the showrunners aren't decisive. So I don't know. That would be, what's the best advice you ever got, Matt? And it's probably from Dad or Papa.
Sure. There's a lot of things that I've heard from Dad over the years. When he started our business, his main focus, and my mom was our accountant when he started out, his main focus, he just said, I have 3 rules, Joni, when we start this business. Pay people on time, pay people on time, pay people on time. And that was it. That's as simple as it sounds. That's how we grew the business. And that is something, Scott Chafee, our CFO, is here tonight. And that's something that we still do and we take very seriously. And people rely on us as to make sure that we keep them in business. And we have a responsibility to do that. The other thing is, it's a Zig Ziglar quote, and that is, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And, you know, when I've been on sets watching you in action, it's evident to me that I feel like I took that from Dad, and that's the way that he ran his business. He went out of his way to care for his employees, and they knew it and they felt it. And when I watch you on set, interacting with people, that's what I gather. And you know, if you were to ask me why you're successful, yeah, you're smart, you're talented, you're somewhat good looking according to Mom, but it's really that you help people feel valued, and watching that is really cool to see in person.
Yeah, I would say a huge reason I feel I was able to get to where I got was because of how we were raised and watching Dad, you know, do his thing. I mean, you know, Dad was, of course, you know, our in terms of running a business and managing personalities was both of our, you know, first and most influential teacher. And you know, the thing that's weird about my job is at one moment you have to be the most intensely creative, artsy, you know, what's that character's emotion? And then a call will come and you need to put out a fire, or someone wants to yell at you about a budget, and it's just, you're shifting from right to left brain so quickly, like whiplash quick. And a lot of people who come out to be writers are very, very artistic and can't handle that. But because we grew up of, you treat people with respect, and here's how you manage business, and here's how you keep people motivated, all of which I learned from Dad. Here's Midwestern common sense, which is in very short supply out here. And all of those things gave me a managerial skill that lets me do my job that I in no way would have been able to do had I not grown up in the family business.
All right, so 3 quick things, very, very quick, and then we want to open up to some questions. So number 1, yes, we both agree that Dad was a great role model. Eric, I'll give you a chance to shoot first. Mom is going to be really pissed if you don't say anything nice about her.
Mom was the best possible mother. She was always my first and best audience. I would say the reason I'm so confident is because Mom was always like laughing so hard at whatever dumb thing I had to say as a 10-year-old. And the amount of love and support she gave all of her children, and the amount of dedication and devotion. We were raised with so much love. It was hard not to turn out, you know, at least pretty functional. What about you?
Ditto.
And her baking. Let's not forget her baking.
Mom, seriously, I know you're watching. I do love you. Have you, the show is on Amazon Prime. Amazon is famously owned by a guy who has a few dollars. Have you ever met is it Bezos? Bezos? How do you pronounce his name?
Bezos.
Have you ever met Jeff Bezos? What's he like?
I have actually. I'll tell a super quick story. I went to an Amazon Christmas party, you know, like we all have Christmas parties, and my wife, Deanna, came with me, and it was pretty awesome. Like, you know, there was like Al Pacino in the corner, and you know, like these celebrities everywhere. And I'm just standing with Deanna having a drink, and she says, hey, I'm going to do a lap and, and see what celebrities I can see. I'm like, okay, do that. So I'm standing by myself for a moment. This like young, 20s assistant comes out of nowhere, and I've never seen her before in my life. And she's like, Eric, Jeff wants to meet you. Stay where you are. Are you going to stay here? Just stay here. And I go, okay. And she vanishes, and I stand there just kind of chilling for like 45 seconds. And then this like army of security guards like emerges out of the crowd and like encircles me. And they're all completely encircled into this party. And then from between two of them, Jeff comes in, shakes my hand, says, big fan of the show and love what you've done and thank you. And it was great. And I said, thank you very much. And wow, and it's an honor to meet you and all that. And he's like, well, great. And thank you. And then he like turns and vanishes into this, past these security, and then the security file away and they file after him and they vanish into the crowd. And I never saw him again that night. And then my wife comes up and she's like, I didn't see anyone, did you? So that was my Jeff Bezos story.
All right. And then the only other thing that I do want to touch on is famously in the show Supernatural, at least locally here, and then a little bit in The Boys, you have referenced Toledo area landmarks. You've also, not as famously, cast a number of Toledoans in your shows. So talk about that for 1 second, and then we'll open it up to questions.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, people ask me where I'm from, and though I've lived in Los Angeles since I was 18, I still say I'm an Ohioan, and it's such a big part of my identity and who I am and how I was raised, that I like to try to bring as much of the Midwest into my work as possible. So for instance, in Supernatural, every road in the first episode is a road in Toledo or Sylvania. I like to throw references in all over the place. In that first episode, Adrian Palicki, who is from Toledo, was in that episode of Supernatural. We just have a spinoff of The Boys that we start shooting, and an actress from Toledo named Lizzie Broadway is going to be one of the leads. So I like to keep, Toledo with me whenever I can. And I think maybe the best final thing to say before questions is, if you ever make it to the end of The Boys or Supernatural, I have a production company logo that comes up, and my production company is called Kripke Enterprises, Scrap Metal and Entertainment. And it's Matt and Dad's logo. And I like to, it makes me feel closer to them, to feel like I'm just running the West Coast branch of the family business. And that's why I named my production company that, because I felt so close to the family business that I wanted to nudge my way in and be a part of it, even though they gave me no permission to do so.
Right, and Dad never approached you.
Yeah, I know. No, I'm trying.
We're gonna go to questions, but the funny thing is, because he named his company Kripke Enterprises, and that comes up at the end, we get headshots, we get scripts. It's very weird being in the recycling business and the aluminum business and having people send us like these glossies. And fortunately, we haven't got any nudes. That would be weird.
Okay, well, now that we know how cool the Kripke brothers are, we're going to pass it off to questions. So Katie's going to take it around. So if anybody has any questions, please raise your hand, and she will come around and make sure that your questions are answered.
Is there a way? The question was, to me, Eric, this is probably the one and only question to me. There, it was, when did I decide to be in the family business? And the interesting road to get there is my dad almost died, and so I came in to keep the business going. He had started the business a year and a half earlier. At the time, I was working in a different family business with my Uncle Harley, and my dad had a perforated ulcer on his jejunum and had bile spilling out into his stomach and had to go to the emergency room, and they thought he was having appendicitis. They opened him up and have to seal him up. And he was basically in the hospital for about 30 days. And so I went to my uncles and said, I know I don't work there, but can I go try to help him out and keep him going? Because his business was a year and a half old, and it was him and my mom and one administrative assistant at the time. And so I started answering the phones. I didn't know what these people were talking about. I didn't understand what a load of painted siding meant. I didn't understand what a load of you guys all know what UBCs are, right? Yeah, used beverage cans, obviously, duh. And I didn't know what it was when people were offering that, and I would go up to the hospital at lunch and after work every day, and my dad would tell me who to call and where to go and how to get a price. And I didn't know what I was doing. I started putting deals together, and he came out of the hospital after a while, and I said, I kind of like what you do. You know, never thought that I would, but I like it. And he fortunately was willing to let me come in. So that's the long version. If you want, I'll tell you the shorter version later. I don't know if there's a way to bring up the chat. And is there a way to do the chat?
Yeah, you could write in the chat, or you could repeat it, Matt, whatever you think is best.
I can't see it. Oh. Got it.
Eric, can you hear me? You
Yeah.
recognize my voice?
Hey, Uncle Harley, how are you?
In the first year series of Supernatural, you were very nice in putting Aunt Stacy and Uncle Harley in it, but we got killed.
Right.
And I always wondered why we got killed.
I genuinely, truly, this sounds like a joke, but it's not. Like, I only kill the people I love. I've killed, I think I've killed Matt. I've killed all of my friends. It's just, I like coming up, when I name people, I like naming them the people I love. And unfortunately, in my shows, those people usually end up dying. But it's with great love.
Is there a way to enable chat that these, or some people can? Because there's some people who are trying to raise their hand and ask a question here. It looks like Cole Reiser is raising his hand to ask a question.
We'll go with that. Yeah, that's fine. Eric, do you, in The Boys, do you have a favorite character creatively? Someone that you're...
They're all, like, I love them all for different reasons. In so many ways, they're all kind of your kids. The character who's the most fun to write for, I don't know if you watch the show, but there's like, the show is about what happens if superheroes were real and in our exact world. And my favorite character to write for is this Aquaman character called the Deep, because it's the dumbest power. Like, talking to fish is the stupidest power in the world. And so he's a blast to write for, because he's always like talking to dolphins and lobsters, and he's for some reason, the writers just love writing that particular character.
He meets a Toledo girl, doesn't he? Isn't that one of the?
Oh, yeah. Right. So he, right, in season 1, and he has gills. He's a terrible person, by the way. He's not a likable. The superheroes aren't good guys in this show. They're all horrible, horrible people. They're basically celebrities. And he gets into a Me Too situation, and he gets banished to Sandusky. And he was working, and you know, and the guy, his representative there, is like, there's Cedar Point and it's going to be great. And then he has a date with a girl who's wearing a Mud Hens shirt, and she like assaults him. and I remember, Matt, I think you talked to the man who owns the Mud Hens, and he's like, hey, terrific, the Mud Hens were in The Boys. And it's like, from a woman who was sexually assaulting a man is not the advertising I think that you want, but hey, no such thing as bad press.
So Joe Napoli is a fan of The Boys, and he loved that the Mud Hen shirt was in there. He was just over at our office, and he was telling the rest of his people who are over visiting that they need to watch it, and they loved that you put the Mud Hen stuff in there. Yeah. All right, I'm going to read this one from Cole Greiser.
Okay.
And this is for you, Eric. It says, Eric, it's evident that your visual style started with your shorts. Whoa, like Battle of the Sexes?
Deep cut.
Deep cut. That was a short film that Eric won an award for. Was that at Sundance Film Festival?
It was just, the award was just being accepted at Sundance Film Festival.
So, all right. Yeah. As a filmmaker myself, I'm finding my style through current projects. Prior to Supernatural, how did you advance your craft as a fellow kid from Toledo and navigate the uncertain times with confidence that you will make this dream a reality? The short version of that is, how did you get confidence to do what you're doing?
Right. You never really have total confidence. I always say, show me a writer who thinks his stuff is amazing, and I'll show you a bad writer. The truth is, you know, you need to be, I mean, I think what you're asking is like, how do you break in? And, you know, first, eventually you need to be where they're making the stuff, or at least making the decisions of where they're making the stuff. And that's New York or Los Angeles, which is scary. I was really scared to go. And then, because that's just where, you know, you're a production assistant on a movie, and you get coffee, and then you're able to, it's just, you have to, it's a hard business to get in, and you have to try to break open every door. And then the thing I would say most of all is filmmaking is way more a craft than it is an art. You know, I liken it to carpentry. It doesn't require some genius strike from lightning. It requires practice. So if you want to write all the time, if you want to make films, you have an advantage that I don't have, that you can make a really professional looking movie for $1,000 or less with, you know, online visual effects and material. You know, what would have cost me $15,000, $20,000 to make the movie, you can do for $1,000. So shoot all the time, write all the time. You know, you don't need someone in Hollywood to say you're a filmmaker. Just start making films.
We go.
I don't. Could you hear that, Eric, or no?
No.
Right. The question is, what was your favorite show, or I guess show idea that you tried to get out and it wasn't successful? You mean a show that was made? Yeah, a show that was made. Okay.
What?
He said, what was your favorite show that wasn't successful? And then he said, Revolution, maybe.
I would say I had there was a time travel show on NBC that I ran and created with this really awesome writer named Sean Ryan, who made The Shield, called Timeless, and it was like a time travel show. I liked that show. I thought that show had like a good spirit, and it was a really positive, fun show that you could show your family. The Revolution almost killed me. I mean, yes, it was a good show, but I was making that show for J.J. Abrams as a producer, and I was easily working 17-hour days, 7 days a week. And I was going to die if I kept making that show. I actually have to admit I was relieved when it was canceled because I was exhausted.
So the takeaway is J.J. Abrams is a terrible person. Is that
no? That's not. Thanks. That's not at all.
All right. So there's a question on here from Chad Kripke, and it says. So far, you've gotten like 4 questions. One's from your uncle and one's from your cousin. So you guys
seems like it's going great.
Thanksgiving, you couldn't have waited.
Yeah, seems like it's going great. Seems great.
Yeah, it says, Eric, aside from ratings and awards, how do you personally gauge your success as a showrunner filmmaker?
That's a good question, Chad. And that should be, again, that applies to everybody's business. Which is you have to satisfy yourself. You cannot get into the game of trying to make other people happy with what you're making. I could tell you that the stuff that became a hit and the stuff that crashed and burned, I could not tell you the difference between them. In my mind, as you're making all of them, you're like, these are going to be awesome. And then one explodes and everyone hates it. And then one is a hit. And I couldn't tell you what I did different. So you can't predict it. You can't predict how the outside world is going to react to anything you do. So all you can do is make sure that you're proud of it and you're happy about it. And it's something that for my particular business entertains me. For everyone else's business, just something that they can feel proud about. And that's the only way. Everything else it's just too impossible. What about you, Matt? How do you gauge? What do you consider? Is it about the amount of? Is it income? Is it about the amount of trades? Like how do you gauge it?
By the lives that you've impacted. That's how I gauge it. Is I have a personal goal to create 10 millionaires out of my company of people who were not millionaires when they came to work there. Yeah. We just embarked on a new homeowners program where Emily put together a financial literacy course for our hourly employees mainly, but the salaried employees who don't own a home or have never owned a home can take part in it. And after they go through the course, and the last day is actually Wednesday, they are eligible for a deposit on a new home, and then we're going to pay $100 a month towards their mortgage for 3 years. And what I'm excited about is a lot of people want to own a home, but they don't know how to do it, and we're trying to help them get there. So I define we define success by how many, really in general, how many people's lives can you impact in this world? Mm-hmm. And you have a platform to do it on a big way. And this last year has been so tough for so many people. And during COVID last year, you made so many people laugh during that time. The Boys is, for those of you unaware who have never seen it, it is the most streamed show in the history of Amazon. So I believe, is that still true?
No, it's pretty close. Yeah.
All right, well, when he says pretty close, that means that I just was, as David Letterman used to say, that was a little bit of writer's embellishment on my part. So we have time for like one more question. Oh, Joe Schrader.
Well, first off, Matt and Eric, thank you so much for sharing your family story. This is the right forum to share it in. You guys got a great story. It's the second time that I've been fortunate enough to hear the story. And so, Eric, great job out there in Hollywood.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, and Matt, you do pretty well here too. So my question is, and by the way, that whole millionaires and homeowners, I mean, great stuff. We need to probably share best practices because that's good stuff that maybe others would implement. But my question is to Eric. So you talked about the Midwest culture, and of course we're all very proud of the Midwest here, being Midwesterns, and I agree. I've got two sisters on the West Coast. And brother or son on the East Coast, and you know we really feel comfortable that you know we are like the salt of the earth here in the Midwest. So tell me about your comment was that there's not enough Midwest culture in going around on the West Coast, and it's an advantage for you, Eric, in your position. So could you kind of like get a little in detail about that a little more?
Yeah. You know, I would say that what comes like with the Midwest, you know, I think common sense is famous but for me, really the biggest one is humility, and you know, egos are not in short supply out here, and people really, I think, get full of themselves, and it makes them unpleasant to be around, and it leads to toxic work environments. But to have the humility, you know, again, you can see, like, I take my lead from my brother, and I take, you know, I take my lead and where I go from, or I take where I go from Matt's lead and from my dad's lead is you treat people with respect, and you are not some amazing thing. You're just another person just trying to do a job and trying to manage people. And so you treat everyone with kindness. I open every, you know, production with a big meeting, and everyone, and I say every single request is going to be please and thank you, or I'm going to talk to you. You're going to lead with kindness. We're not going to have any drama here. If you have a problem with someone, you're going to face them directly and talk it out calmly and respectfully. Because we're all going to make sure that we can go home safely and be with our families, because that's infinitely more important than anything we're doing on the job. And so it's just those types of things are things that I learned from the Midwest. You put family first, and you put, you know, your fellow human first, and only then do you worry about the work. And I think that attitude, I think, you know, Matt just said it, it's clear. You know, I learned that from Matt, and I learned that from my dad and my mom.
Excellent. Keep spreading the Midwest culture out there. We need
Okay.
it. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. So thank you both so much for being here. So Eric, thank you for giving us a glimpse of what it's like in Hollywood, and thank you for being open and candid with your stories. I'm a huge fan of The Boys. And when did we say season 3 is dropping?
The way they haven't announced it yet, but it'll be like middle of next year.
Okay. All right. So thank you for everything. Matt, thank you for your time as well, your support and involvement with the center and over the years, and the good work you do in the community and your company, and we very much appreciate that. Eric, your work is amazing. We know someday you'll get that Emmy, and I will be here for it. Cheering you on.
Thanks.
But tonight, we're going to give the award to Matt. He gets our very last Scutchie for the evening. Oh, Chris has it. This is the, and this might be, his mom's online right now. This might be her proudest moment right now. You get the, it's better than an Emmy scutchie. So you're welcome. Right. So when you do win that Emmy, Eric, hopefully we'll have you guys, we can get a picture of those side by side, or when you're doing your Emmy speech, if you want to give a nod to the scutchie, that's fine. If you need a scutchie for your prop room, that's fine too. Let us know. We can get you one of those. Would love to see that on an episode of The Boys.
Good.
So finally, a big thank you to Jim Kenzie back there. I'm fairly confident that this would be a hot mess if this were left up to Kirsten and I to figure this out with the TVs and the videos and the Zoom. So thank you, Jim, for being here. We always appreciate your support. And he's been here all day. I mean, it's not bad being in a bar all day long, but Jim has been here all day working on this for us. So we very much appreciate that. Thank you to Kripke for the fun drinks, the recyclable drinks that you can use over and over, or the drink cups. If you don't have one, we have some up here. I think they were using them for the beer. There's some at the bar. There's some up here. If you didn't get one, make sure that you get one. Thank you to Noah with Green Eye Photography. He's around here capturing the evening for us. We appreciate that. Watch for LinkedIn, Facebook. We'll get all those pictures out there. Please like and share. We recorded the session. We will get this online on our YouTube site. We'll send that link out. You'll want to share that with everyone because I thought this was absolutely fabulous. And I think that's it. I think I covered everyone. Thank you all for attending. That's a wrap. And now the countdown ends, or the countdown starts for our 30th anniversary celebration, which will be next year around this time. And I feel like we'll probably start planning that next week. So welcome, Megan. You know, it's something we can start working on. Thank you. Thanks. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.